So I hope everybody is connected, and there are rules on your screen there, those that logged on early. We're going to have the three presenters, starting with Andre Durete. Let's just repeat these, colleagues. Please mute all your mics on your screens and switch off the video function. Those that are joining us via MS Teams, we will not be able to see you even if you have your screen on. And then I'm going to ask Mr. Makova to give us a safety briefing. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome in Franklin Auditorium. My name is Emmanuel. In the event of an incident in the building or any emergency, we have PA system in this room. We will receive the message from the control center. We listen to the message. Then you take your belongings. However, before you leave the room, please help people with disability if they are in the room. Then we have only 2 emergency doors available. I have one on my right and another one on my left, there at the corner. When you take the belongings, then when you choose to use the door on my left, you go out and take the staircase down, go through the security checkpoint. Then on the garden next to the pool outside there, you will see assembly point number 2. We can assemble there with our attendance register. I hope everybody in this auditorium has signed the register. If you forgot to sign the register, please go and do so at the desk outside there. If you choose the door on my right, there's a passage. You go out and take your right again. At the end of the passage, there's a glass door. Go through that glass door and take your right. And take the staircase down, go through the security as well there, and then we'll see you go to join the assembly point number 2. If the staircase is blocked, then you go straight as you go into the building. By the retail stores, you take your right and go through the security checkpoint there as well. And then in front of you will see the car park. Next to the car park, there is assembly point number 1. We can only use that assembly point if the one on the assembly point 2 is blocked. Should you need to report anything in this room, and any emergency or any incident, from your cell phone, you dial 011-800-6666 or 011-800-444-1. Should the fire starting from this room, on the passage outside there on my right, there is a fire extinguisher there. We can use that fire extinguisher to extinguish the fire. Only those colleagues who are trained to fight the fire can help us with that. So do you need to report anything, then you dial the number that I have said already. And then on those 2 assembly points, you wait there until our safety officers come and address us if the building is safe and clear. Then you come back to the same auditorium and continue with the business of the day. I thank you.
Right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Very grateful to be here with you this morning to take you through an update of the system. I'm joined on the stage this morning by Mr. Jan Oberholzer, our Chief Operating Officer, and Mr. Beking Kumalo, who is our Group Executive in charge of generation, and who is also the Managing Director of our Generation Division, which has recently been established. So welcome to those two gentlemen as well. To start off this presentation, I would like to take you through a quick overview of where we are on our key strategic priorities, and in particular the progress that we've made since the beginning of this year. So it's no secret that we are facing a significant number of challenges. We have debt of some 450 billion rand, and we don't have enough revenue to cover our debt service costs. We have had our challenges with the National Energy Regulator of South Africa, NERSA. These are winding their way through the courts in various cases, and this is part of our quest to find cost-reflective tariffs that enable us to be a viable and sustainable business. We also have a significant cost challenge. Our operating expenditure has increased some 30% over the past 5 years, which is a very high compound annual growth rate. We've seen large increases in employee and also coal costs, and then our procurement costs are significantly higher than what I believe the norm should be. You will know, and the South African public knows, that we have had challenges with our operations, and in particular our generation plant, where our energy availability factor, or EAF, has been below 70% for FY19 and 20. And this has resulted in highly regrettable load shedding, which has had to be imposed on the country. And that has led to increased costs, not only for Eskom, but also a significant cost burden imposed on the South African economy. But also, very importantly, it's lost revenue that Eskom could have generated had it the facilities available to produce that electricity. Then it is also clear that we have been operating in an environmentally unsustainable manner at some of our operations, and as a consequence, we have been exceeding license conditions. These are currently being rectified, but it is part of our both literal as well as our social license to operate, and therefore it's very important that we address these environmental challenges as quickly as possible. Our business model, I think, can safely be said to be outdated. We are arguably the last remaining very large vertically integrated power utility in the world, so we are an anomaly. The world of energy has changed around us, and we need to change along with it. And as we change and as we divisionalize, we will see the operational and structural inefficiencies become more apparent, and we can then address those. Moving along to the actions that we've taken and the alternative of doing nothing. If we don't fix our operational stability, we will be on the red downward sloping curve, which will result in poor governance, as we've seen, poor staff morale. Eskom will be unable to operate. We will require increased borrowings and increased support from the fiscus, which we know is going to be very challenging, particularly in a post-COVID-19 environment where the fiscus is going to be very constrained. And eventually, we will have severe restrictions and curtailments imposed on us from an operational perspective, which will translate into lower availability of electricity to the South African economy, which of course is completely unacceptable. We are therefore developing plans to address our operational stability, to improve our income statement, to address our balance sheet, and to continue on the journey that we've embarked on to restructure and divisionalize our operations, all the while improving the culture and motivation of our people who are so critical in enabling us to be a successful organization. So the priorities that I set out when I started my tenure here at Eskom at the beginning of the year were fivefold. Operational stability. We have been able to do some short-term opportunity maintenance. We have launched the reliability maintenance program, and just as a point of clarification, we've rebranded the philosophy maintenance program to now henceforth be called the reliability maintenance program, because we think that's a more appropriate name. We have resourced that program from internal mostly and one external resource, and we are making very good progress in addressing our maintenance backlog. We've also taken steps to address the repurposing of power stations that are reaching the end of their operating lives and are due to be retired, and this is in an attempt to ensure that a just energy transition takes place and that we're able to continue to support those communities, coal mining as well as generation communities, in which we've been operating in some instances for more than 50 years. We believe that we can't just abandon those, and we've launched an expression of interest to invite interested parties to come and tell us how they would approach this particular opportunity. We have taken the knife to our costs. Our year-to-date cost savings are above target, so cost discipline is very much a hallmark of every discussion that we have as an executive committee. We have a really strong focus on managing our cost base downward, and in particular we are going to be focused on procurement savings and in reducing our spend. There's a lot of work to be done on our procurement, and we've got a team that is motivated and engaged to deliver results on that. To bolster our balance sheet, we have taken steps to reduce our working capital. Some of our inventories, in particular our spares inventories, are too high. Some of our payment terms, particularly to multinational corporations whose cost of capital is lower than Eskom's, are too generous, so we are taking steps to reduce that. And we are significantly reducing our capital expenditure in a responsible manner, but in a prioritized manner to be able to ensure that we get the most bang for our buck. And then, as I said, we have initiated the Just Energy transaction, which we believe will enable us to reduce the cost of our funding. We have restructured our business. We have established the divisional boards using internal resources, so no new costs were incurred in setting up those divisional boards. We have taken steps to appoint managing directors. We are running these divisions now as separate businesses. They've got their own income statements. We are in the process of setting up appropriate balance sheets and apportioning the relevant portion of debt to each of those. The boards have each had 2 meetings so far, so we are starting to gain traction on the journey to getting far greater transparency and accountability from our divisional boards. We are also in the process of establishing a high-performance culture. It is no surprise that Eskom people have been through a lot over the past decade, and this has had an impact on their morale. And I think it's a testament to the loyalty and commitment of our people that they have been working as hard as they have, and I believe that that's a huge asset for us to leverage off in order to deliver even better results. And to support those efforts, we have resuscitated our corporate values. So values are now, again, first and foremost in our engagements, so that we can drive values like no harm, like integrity, very important for us here at Eskom. And that has led to a sense of urgency being created amongst our employees. So let me now address some of the individual elements that you've seen in greater detail. The generation plant is still not as reliable and predictable as we would like it to be, and we need to improve our current plant performance and to reduce the risk of load shedding. So we've launched reliability maintenance. We have tackled initiatives to unlock additional capacity. We've also approached the market with the assistance of the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy to procure electricity from those producers that can sell into the grid. We've had a very strong focus on coal supply and supply stability, and the quality of coal has improved markedly since we have imposed very strict quality control measures at our power stations. We have also now been able to secure the coal stocks that are required, and we are now in a comfortable position where we are able to confidently say that the coal is adequate to tide us through whatever situation develops. We've made very good progress on improving our new builds. You will know that these have been plagued by design errors. We have addressed some of these errors at unit number 3 at Medupi. These improvements, on the face of it, have been a huge success. For the first time ever, Unit 3 was able to run at design capacity, so that's very positive news. We're now in the process of trialing and testing those improvements and seeing if we can sustain those delivery. But we're not waiting for the rollout of these changes to the rest of the units on Medupi and Kusile. We are in fact continuing to implement them in order to ensure that we extract the delivery from those units that they were designed to do. We've continued to manage the demand side. You will have seen that the traffic light system is back in place on our television screens. We need to, as I've said, address our environmental issues. It's a key issue for us, and our current performance is not where I'd like it to be or where it needs to be, and therefore there's a big job ahead of us to get our environmental compliance right. Our SAP system, which is an enterprise resource planning system, a computer system, unfortunately has also been neglected over the years, and as a consequence has created opportunities for us to procure goods and services on a so-called free text basis. And what this means is that we are unable to leverage either the governance or the buying power that Eskom has in order to bring down the unit costs of what we procure. So there's a very concerted effort on the go to improve the reliability and availability of our SAP system as well, our computer system, in order for us to make sure that we have the IT backbone to run our business appropriately. We're not forgetting about transmission and distribution. We're paying attention to those two units as well. And then we are busy developing the concepts that will allow our transmission business, as per the vision contained in the DPE's roadmap for the energy or electricity industry in South Africa, to start acting as a market operator and also as a single buyer. So we are taking steps in that direction as well. As far as the income statement is concerned, it is clear that we need to address the income statement, first of all, as I've said, by avoiding load shedding. But then secondly, we need to be more efficient in order to obtain a better return on assets. We're in the process, hopefully, of resolving our disputes with NERSA. We are making good progress in that, and it is one of my objectives to engage far more constructively with NERSA and try and resolve our differences outside of the court rather than by reverting to the legal system. We have engaged in further discussions with our municipal debtors. There's still an amount of some 28 billion rand outstanding, which we are seeking to recover. You will have seen that in some instances we've obtained orders of court. We have continued to drive hard for payment agreements. Not all of these payment agreements are always honored, but we are working hard with the Eskom political task team led by the Deputy President, who is very actively involved in facilitating a solution to this really challenging problems. And we have been receiving very good support from our colleagues at SELGA as well. So thanks to SELGA and the constructive role that they are playing in seeking to address municipal debt. We burn a lot of fuel oil, and that is a spend of about 4.1 billion rand per annum. We believe that through greater operational stability we can address that. We still burn too much diesel, even though, as Jan and Becky will indicate, we have been able to bring those costs under a greater degree of control. There's still an opportunity for us to save more. We have exited some 184 senior executives from the organization through a voluntary severance program. So that has been a success in reducing our wage bill, and we think that this is the way, a positive and constructive way in which we can address headcount in a positive way that does not create conflict. We are going to be embarking on a renegotiation process with our IPPs. This is something that, in particular, colleagues from organised labour have been calling for. We have done analysis on that, and we believe that there are opportunities for us to engage with those IPPs with a view to reducing the net cost to the South African electricity consumers. And then we are also continuing to improve our systems to allow us to have far greater governance on our procurement system, inter alia through a system called Price Check, which will make it extremely difficult, if not impossible, for people to pay egregiously high prices for common commodities. And that's a narrative that's been doing the rounds for a long period of time, and it's something that we are getting our arms around. The balance sheet, we don't have a strong balance sheet at this point in time. This is our objective. So we are cutting back our capital expenditure. We have set our team a stretch target of significantly reducing capex for this year, and this is going to be a challenge, because at the same time as we're required to spend money, we are going to have to make sure that every rand we spend is spent wisely. We have some ideas on improving our very big bill that we've got for environmental capital expenditure. We are required to spend in the order of some 56 billion rand in capex on environmental compliance over the next 10 years, and we are engaged in a process to ensure that we can spend this money in the best possible way to achieve the best economic outcome for South Africa. And then, as I've said, we are addressing spares. We are addressing the very large provisions that we need to make for decommissioning in order to rehabilitate older power stations. And then part of this bigger strategy is the so-called just energy transition transaction that is in its early stages. The restructuring, very much on the go. What is very important as we do this is that we maintain strong governance, and therefore we are working on appropriate delegations of authority, that everybody understands what his or her decision-making rights are, and that there are adequate checks and balances to ensure that no one can exceed that authority and abuse the state of flux that is inevitably created when you go through a restructuring exercise. So very much part of this effort is to make sure that we run a tight ship as we restructure. We need to do further work on our distribution business model. It is arguably the most complex part of our business, in particular because of the fact that municipalities, for example, also act as distributors, and we have also engaged with our colleagues at SELGA in this regard. We are looking at some of our non-core assets. Our non-core assets include Eskom Rotec Industries. We have developed a turnaround plan for that business. It's a very aggressive turnaround program, and I think the CEO of that business, Philip Dukashe, has done a particularly fine job at identifying opportunities for us to improve efficiencies and take out costs. So I'm very excited by the plans that he's got in order to turn ERI into a more profitable business. We've also got an insurance business. It's called SCAP. It's a captive insurance structure, and this captive insurance is an opportunity for us to also understand how we can save by diversifying and potentially exiting from that business. We also have a finance corporation, and this business is in the process of being sold. We are awaiting bids from a number of interested parties, and as soon as this bidding process is concluded, we will then be able to make a decision on the future of this business. We believe there are opportunities for us to create public-private partnerships through the repurposing, and we think that this could be a very important part of the just energy transition. And we have fully clarified what the end state for Eskom is going to look like with our shareholder, and there is strong alignment between us on that side. Then lastly, but definitely very importantly, our people. Our people are a fantastic asset. We've got incredibly skillful people working in our organization, and it's up to us as management to unlock that capability in our people in a values-driven way. Very important that they act appropriately. We have a strong drive for internal communication. We are telling our people more about what's going on in the business, trying to create a sense of urgency. We're driving a high-performance culture. There is a production bonus aimed at the lower levels of the organization that we have set up. I can give you the assurance that none of the executives in this room will qualify for that. So this is really for our shop floor employees to make sure that we can unlock the capacity that is sitting in their hands by incentivizing them to deliver the goods. It is entirely self-funding, so there's no public money that is going to be spent on this. It is a structure that allows them to participate in the very significant value that they can unlock if they meet some of those very ambitious stretch targets that we have set for them. We've implemented a system of forced ranking for senior management. This is uncomfortable, it's challenging, but I think it's very important for us as executives to also drive a culture where we can hold each other accountable for our performance. One size fits all in terms of performance and also in terms of pay clearly does not lead to a high performance culture. So we are going to be making sure that we lead by example when it comes to measuring ourselves against the performance targets that we've set. We are trying to drive visible felt leadership. Unfortunately, this has been held back by the COVID-19 pandemic. We have not been able to engage as much with colleagues as we have, as we would have liked to, but at least we have been using technology to host some meetings, but it's there's no substitute for personal contact. And then finally, the ExCo structure is finalized, and we are now in the process of filling some of the key vacancies that exist. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I would just like to comment on our response to COVID-19. Unfortunately, we have had 21 cases as of 7 o'clock this morning of COVID-19. Like the rest of the country, the majority of these cases are found in the Western Cape. We have put in place contingency plans for our Koeberg and Ankerlig facilities in order to ensure that we can operate under a variety of different scenarios. The lockdown has had an impact on our ability to carry out our reliability maintenance program. Regrettably, we are, for medical reasons, unable to congregate numbers of Eskom employees and contractors on a single site. That would be irresponsible, and therefore we have had to delay that process until the end of lockdown. But we haven't been idle. We have used the process to do a lot of preparatory work and also to put in place commercial contracts with the original equipment manufacturers that will enable us to hit the ground running And our target date there is the 1st of July to kick off our reliability maintenance program. We've also tried to act as a responsible corporate citizen. We've made the Eskom Academy of Learning, which is a very nice facility situated in Midrand, to the Gauteng Department of Health for use as a quarantine facility, and that has been, I think, very successfully used. We've been producing large volumes of hand sanitizers. We've been assisting in the development of ventilators. We have been assisting with the manufacturing of masks. So I think that we are navigating our way through this as best we can. These are unprecedented and very challenging times, but perhaps in the midst of this crisis, there is the seed of an opportunity for us to recover that will germinate into a stronger and more reliable Eskom going forward. So, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, yes, we have seen some improvements. I think the fact that we were able to achieve 30,000 megawatts of availability last night without using any diesel is testament to the fact that we are seeing an improvement, a turnaround in our generation system. And I would like to thank Bheki Nkumalo and his generation team for the extraordinary effort that they are putting into ensuring that generation is in fact turning around. We're saving cost, we are restructuring, and we are making good progress on pursuing those that have sought to benefit at the expense of Eskom by uncovering and pursuing in conjunction with the Special Investigations Unit as well as with the Hawks unlawful contracts. And we have been successful in recovering some of the proceeds that people have been able to retain. We've recovered that. There have been some announcements in the media on that. So with that, I would like to thank you very much for your attendance here today, and I'm now going to hand over to Jan Oberholzer, our Chief Operating Officer. He is going to make some brief introductory remarks before he hands over to Bheki, who will take us through the detail of the generation system. So Jan, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning. Andre, thank you so much. Basically, the aim of my very brief presentation will be an overview of the operations of the business. So then I will hand it over to our Group Executive Generation, Bheki Nkumalo, which will then dive quite deep into the generation aspect of our business. Great. I'd like to start by looking at what has happened on the system during the period and what is still happening during the period of COVID as well as the lockdown. Now, obviously, we had quite an impact in terms of the demand of the country. At certain times, it went down up to about 11,000 megawatts, between 6,000 and 11,000 megawatts. So obviously that brought about some significant challenges onto the system. You know, at night minimum, it sometimes went down to below 15,000. So that is bringing about some new challenges in terms of frequency as well as in terms of the voltage on our network. It's been new territory, new waters that we've been sailing on, but I'd like to congratulate my colleagues in System Ops and in transmission environment by dealing very successfully with that. So I'm really proud of them that they have dealt successfully with this challenge. So you had a positive in terms of demand of the country went down. However, that posed some new challenges, but we have dealt with that extremely successful. This reduction in demand obviously put some positives for us on the table in terms of maintenance. We then took advantage of this time period to do some what we call short-term opportunistic maintenance. But I have to emphasize that this maintenance was to address some urgent matters on the system. So it's not the reliability maintenance where you take a unit off and that you care for it and you replace and you fix for 60 days or whatever the case may be. So we have made use of this opportunity and this time to do quite a number of short-term opportunistic maintenance. On 1 week specifically, the maintenance, which usually is about 4,500 megawatts, jumped to 9,000 megawatts. That's just an indication on how aggressively we did do some maintenance on our generation network. The Chief earlier spoke about open cycle gas turbines, burning of diesel. So just some feedback. Obviously, with the lockdown, we spent not a lot of money, so to speak, in relative terms, on burning of diesel to run our open cycle gas turbines. We spent just over 20 million during the month of April. And one then will ask the question, so why do you spend diesel when the demand is down? So we had to run these diesels in order to deal with the opportunities and the challenges that I've spoken about in terms of network when we had very low demand in the country. In terms of the last financial year, we had a provision of about 7 billion to run our open cycle gas turbines. So that was a provision. We have a saving on that provision of 2.7 billion. Still a lot of money, but at least, there was a significant saving on the provision that we had for the financial year. Now, Koeberg Unit 2 was due for an outage in the beginning of April. However, we had some challenges in terms of the lockdown and COVID, in terms of spares, in terms of getting resources from Europe specifically, as well as from the East. So what we then decided to do is to put unit number 2 in cold reserve. It's still in cold reserve. So we are now getting ready, depending on what will happen with the lifting of the lockdown in terms of the stages. And the plan at this point in time is to bring Koeberg Unit 2 back in a couple of weeks from now, 6 weeks from now. We'll run it for a period, and then we will take it down for the outage, which we will do some refueling as well. What has happened, and maybe I should put this slide on. This gives an indication, the black lines is what was our forecast before the lockdown in terms of the demand of the country. And then clearly we can see on the red line what actually transpired the last 8 weeks. So you can see a significant reduction in demand. And basically the green at the bottom, that shaded area shows the impact in terms of the lower demand. Now, if you look at the blue line going forward, this is our view of the crystal ball looking forward. What will happen is we can see that what we forecast now, based on the original forecast, is very close. It just shows you that our colleagues in system operations, again, is doing a fantastic job in terms of forecasting in this very uncertain times. Also, what we can see is that specifically the last, I would say, 2 weeks, where we had a very low demand in the country, it is significantly increased now, as we've said earlier, to in excess of 30,000 megawatts at night. So there's been quite a ramp up over the last 2 weeks. And then again, I need to say that the generation colleagues have done extremely well to deal with this uncertainty and this increase in demand. So well done to the generation colleagues. So that just gives you an indication of what we see will happen, I suppose, in the next 6 to 8 weeks. If we then look at the rest of our operations, transmission networks, we have sustained the last financial year, as well as the last quarter, extremely good performance on the network. However, during the period, the last year, we had some incidents on the transmission network. We had some line faults, which were unplanned. We had a line, 7/6 line, that some of the towers went down. So we had some incidents on the transmission network, and we are dealing now with that. So we commissioned and requested EPRI to do as an independent external audit. So that report has been submitted, been given to our colleagues in transmission as well as distribution with the recommendations. So we have adapted now our maintenance plans to deal and to include those recommendations from EPRI. So we believe, and obviously there's quite a lot of emphasis on the issue of maintenance within transmission. I'm also very proud of the colleagues that on average we above 95% of what we plan and actually what we've executed. So we will continue to have that focus on the transmission network and to make sure that our performance that has deteriorated a little bit over the last financial year, that it's back to where it's supposed to be. However, what we pick up currently, and the COVID period, you can understand that doesn't make it that easier. Vandalism and theft of our transmission tower members, as well as the steel and other cabling within our substation environment. So that is really a challenge, and it's posing quite a significant impact on the network performance. But all in all, our transmission colleagues, well done. Very proud of you, doing a tremendous job. On the distribution side, we've exceeded in the last financial year our electrification target with more than 5,000 connections. Again, to the colleagues in distribution, well done. Very proud of you. You know, this is ongoing excellent performance over the years by connecting new customer, new households to the grid, providing electricity to those that never had it before. So, well done. But unfortunately, in the distribution environment, we have an increase in non-technical losses. The Group Chief Executive spoke earlier about the outstanding debt. So obviously this has a negative impact. And also then we have the same challenges on the distribution network that we have on the transmission network in terms of theft and vandalism, which also poses significant challenges. However, if you look at the network performance and distribution in terms of duration of faults and the frequency of faults, we set ourselves some very tough targets, and we have managed to successfully achieve and exceed those very challenging targets. So please keep up the good work, my colleagues in distribution. Very proud of you. Well done. Then Kuberg, we, in the beginning of the year, established a new independent external oversight body consisting out of specialists in the nuclear environment worldwide. So they met and they had an audit of Kuberg in the beginning of the year in February. And the report was that we are doing a tremendous job at Kuberg in terms of running it safely. So I need to emphasize that we are running Kuberg very safely. So well done to the colleagues in Kuberg, as well as in the nuclear operating unit. Please keep up the good work. We brought back unit number 1 after an outage in January. Unfortunately, we had an incident and we had an unplanned breakdown, or actually not a breakdown, a trip, that we had to shut down the reactor. But it's back now, and it's been running for close to, I think it's 55, close to 60 days on full load. When I looked this morning, 930 megawatts, so running extremely well. Then, obviously, we now in the process working very hard to obtain the license in 4 years' time, that we can extend the life of Kuberg for the next 20 years. One of the projects that we need to execute is a replacement of the steam generators for both these units. 3 units, 3 steam generators on each unit. It's posing to be quite a challenging project. However, there is dedicated attention, even from myself, on this project. So, but all in all, for the Kuberg colleagues, well done. Please keep up the good work. Then in terms of new build, our colleagues in Group Capital. Excuse me. On the 26th of January, we took unit number 3 at Medupi out for a period of 75 days to implement all the design modifications to deal with the latent defects. Now, this unit was brought back within the 75 days. Very proud of that. And as the Chief said, on the 6th of May, we achieved 793 megawatts full capacity. While we were generating 793, we exported, we sent into the system 729 megawatts. We're now in the process to evaluate, to assess. That will take about 3 to 4 months, so by the end of August we will know. However, we have decided to take Unit 6 off and implement the same modifications. So as we speak, Unit 6 is out, where we're implementing these same modifications, because we believe we are successful in the modifications that we have implemented on Unit number 3, although we still need this assessment period. And we have also, the last 2 weeks, taken off Unit number 1. So we currently have Unit 6 and Unit 1 at Medupi, that is where we implement these design modifications. We then plan the following units, which is 2, 4, and 5, during the remainder of this calendar year, to do exactly the same modifications. Now, as you perhaps know, 5 units at Medupi is in commercial operation, contributing to the grid. And unit number 1, although it has been synchronized and also has contributed to the network, to the capacity, that unit is planned for commercial operation before the end of the financial year, which is March. So then Medupi will be in full commercial operation, all units. If we then look at Kusile, there we have 1 unit that is in commercial operation, unit number 1. Unit number 2 and 3 has been synchronized, contributing to the network. So on average, I would say about 450 to 500 megawatts. So this is why we're doing the capability test as well as the optimization. So we plan to have these 2 units, unit number 2 and unit number 3, in commercial operation in the next 3 to 6 months. Then we will have half the station at Kusile that is in commercial operation. So then we plan to implement the rest of, put into commercial operation the remainder of the 3 units before the end of the financial year, which is about March 2024. I'd like to also extend my sincere congratulations and well done to the teams at Medupi and Kusile. You know, it's difficult times now. We had to postpone, when the lockdown started, we had to postpone and put in preservation the units 4, 5, and 6 at Kusile. As we speak, we're in the process to reintroduce the contractors on site. So we have done successfully already 3,500 contractors. Obviously, that's coming with significant challenges with the pandemic that we have. But we are dealing with that because we understand, you know, the need of the contractors to earn a living. So, at Ingula, we have 4 units. Initially, we had some design challenges there as well. But as of February, we have re-rated based on the design modifications that we have implemented all 4 units back to maximum capacity of 333 megawatts. So Ingula is operating as we have planned it to be. So again, well done. Then just very briefly, as I said, our maintenance before the lockdown was 3,600 megawatts, and that has increased, you know, to the 9,000 that I have referred to. Currently, although in all fairness, it's reduced a little bit, but we're about 5,000, 6,000 megawatts on average now that we're doing maintenance. And that will continue as we have then the opportunity to implement the reliability maintenance, which Becky will talk about a little bit later. So it's up from the average of the 4,000 to the 6,000. Then there was a commitment from the leadership in generation, from Becky that will talk now, as well as his 3 cluster managers, each looking after a handful of power stations. They've committed to reduce on a sustainable way 2,000 megawatts of partial load losses. Now, we had quite an open dialogue yesterday between the chief, Becky, and the 3 cluster managers and myself, and we're confident that that has been achieved. And there is total commitment from the generation leadership to have dedicated focus on the issue of reducing partial load losses. Becky will talk in detail about the winter plan. However, what I can say is before we had the lockdown, we forecasted 31 days of stage 1 load shedding. So what has helped us the last 8 weeks doing these urgent maintenance, short-term maintenance, when we ran the model again, we are now forecasting 3 days of stage 1 load shedding over the winter period that is coming. However, I need to say that is based on a 80% probability. But it's important to say that due to the neglect of our system over the last decade, the system remains unpredictable and very unreliable. So we still have trips and breakdowns. So although we forecast at this point in time a possibility of 3 days of load shedding, I need to say that the risk of load shedding remains because of exactly what I said, the unpredictability and unreliability. And as we said at the end of January, this unfortunately will remain up until we have dealt with the system in terms of the reliability maintenance, and what we foresee stays the same as we said in January up until the middle of 2021. With this, I'd like to stop and hand over to our Group Executive Generation, Becky Ntlwalo. So Becky will now have a look at the performance in more detail of generation. He will then give you an update on the maintenance, where do we stand with that, as well as a 9-point recovery plan that we've been talking about, and then he'll look at the winter outlook going forward. So thank you, Becky.
Thank you, Jan. Good morning, everyone. I will be taking you through the process since we last spoke earlier in this year in terms of what has happened. Then I will just have a quick reflection on the system performance and then during the lockdown. And then I will also close by reflecting on the winter plan as the way as we see it in terms of the current I think on this picture, what we want to show is that given the last year that the performance was extremely bad. So in the past 8 weeks when we had the lockdown, you will see that the green bar there that reflects on terms of our maintenance, it has moved from 9% to 16%. That is a remarkable increase of the maintenance that we have undertaken, though it was a short-term maintenance, as was mentioned by Jan and Andre. But that has given us some opportunity to execute the scope of this unfortunate situation of the lockdown. It also shows that the readiness of our teams, because since we started this recovery journey, we were very clear, we understand where is our pain point. So we needed just to get this opportunity, and we started to execute it immediately. So that has also given us some relief. As you would see that on the availability, we have managed then to claw back about 5% on the availability during this period. Our journey in terms of the recovery for this year, it still comprises on the full load losses and also mainly the partial load losses, as Jan has reflected, to see the focus that we put in place during the lockdown was really to reduce those partial load losses as far as possible, and we had a commitment that we have made to the CE, Jan, and also to Eskom, that we will guarantee that we will claw back 2,000 megawatts from this, and that's what we've been doing. You will see the numbers of April started to show some positive trends in terms of the reduction. Those partial load losses, that second last column there was something that was running in the region of over 7,000, and then we currently managed to claw back from that system. And then also over these couple of months that have passed, I'm sure you would have seen as well, we have had some not so good incident that has happened within the generation fleet, where we have to, out of these major issues, I want to touch on two of them, which is the shutdown of the Camden power station because of our ash dam challenges, and then also the high emissions incident at our Kendall power station. So the Camden ash dams, we have had some delays in terms of the construction of the new dams, so we have put in place, it was late last year, some risk assessment and the processes, how are we going to safely manage the dams, because obviously as part of our resolve as well is that the safety comes first in terms of our operations. We will not compromise on safety of the people at our power station and also the people around our operations, because when the risk is on the ash dams, it also poses serious challenges for the communities as well around the power station. So we had to make a call in April to take off the whole of Camden power station. And unfortunately, during that same period as well, our construction teams that is building a new dam had to go off-site. So that is like 1,600 megawatts that we needed to take it off from the system. But I think it was a good call because the safety, like we're saying, if the failure of the dam is very catastrophic, so we couldn't afford that. But I think the good news that has come from that as well, which is something that we also use to stress test our plans that we have put in place, that with that 1,600 on that power station, although 200 of it is on the plan, we are managing to cope with the ramp up of the system. So this is something that, although it's an unfortunate situation, but we are using also to stress test our plans to say we've got this 1,600 that is off. How is the rest of the system performs during this ramp up? And then coupled with that as well, we've got the Kubek unit down on cold reserve, like Jan was saying. So those are also the signs that also give us some indications in terms of where we're going with our recovery journey on this drive. So we expect the Camden unit to start coming back towards the end of the winter months. But our team there at Camden and our cluster manager, Bruce, they're putting aggressive effort as well, looking at other alternatives on the older side of the dam to see where we can move and create space to start bringing the units back as quickly as possible. So that was quite an unfortunate situation there, but I think from a risk management processes that was put in place, also vetted by the external independent appointed dam specialist, so we felt that this was the good call to shut down the stations. And then I want also to talk a bit about the Kendall power station, because our environmental performance last year was greatly compromised, mainly because of the performance of our Kendall plant. You will recall we did indicate last year as well that since the industrial action in 2018, that has caused massive damages on the Kendall plant in terms of our electrostatic precipitators and our dust handling system. So we've also received a compliance notice from the Environmental Department of Environmental Affairs on the Unit 1 and 5 at Kendall. So we have then taken conscious decision that we will now put all the efforts at Kendall to make sure that we bring this plant to perform again and with compliance. So Unit 1, we have taken an outage early in January. We've worked on it. The unit is currently back and is operating within the license requirements. Then Unit 5, which was another unit that was put on the compliance notice by the department. We have taken to say, let's bite a bullet on this unit and do the right things. And we have taken Unit 5 on a long-term outage. So currently Unit 5 is the first unit at Camden that is undergoing the major refurbishment. And then we are not only dealing with the major refurbishment on the dust handling and the emissions control, but we're also making sure that the reliability maintenance is being executed during this time, so that when this unit returns next year, it is not only complying to the environmental performance, but it's giving us sustainable energy going forward. So what we have done as well during this lockdown period, specifically at Kendall, we have taken a number of units down to do the short-term interventions to continue, even on the units that were not on the compliance notice, to continue to do some work to minimize the impact of those units. But all the units, the next unit to undergo the major refurbishment is going to be Kendall Unit number 6. And we are quite positive that with all this, what we have done as well, we have appointed an independent company or institute, APRI, that is now vetting our plans, firstly to meet the phase 1, which is 100 milligrams at Kendall 1. So they've been with us, and then their report is also going to be submitted to the Department of Environmental Affairs. And then they are also with us when we are doing phase 2 to go to 50 levels of compliance in terms of the emissions at Kendall. I think you also might have noticed that recently there has been some cry about the data reporting at Kendall. So we have also initiated an independent review by our forensic teams to check the emissions reporting as well, that everything is above board, because we have got no reason to hide anything in terms of what we are doing. So that is the situation at Kendall. There is a strict focus on that between our generation team and also our project team from Group Capital. We are meeting frequently to deal with the issues of bringing Kendall emission performance back to spec. Then I just want to also reflect a bit on our 9-point plan, because the 9-point plan, as we have indicated it since the past year, is still the cornerstone of the generation recovery in terms of the elements that we have on it. The first point there in terms of the 9-point plan, Jan has spoken extensively about it in terms of the new plant. We're fixing the new build. So some good work has been done by our teams there. So we are quite hopeful from the generation side, because we are also very involved in that, because it's for our good interest that the performance of this plant, they do perform as we expected. So I will then move to the second part of the 9-point plan that deals with the trips. So as we have put teams led by the senior managers within my structure that deals with the trips, and all the stations have put the plans to reduce the number of trips, and we are starting to see some of the positive trends. We are still going to take a long journey for us to achieve that. What we have done also recently, as indicated by Andre, we have relinked some of the staff from head office, especially engineering teams, and then some of them, their focus is also on this space, because this is the space that also creating the issues of reliability. Part of the 9-point plan was also to bring back the units that were on the long-term breakdown or shutdown. I mean, you recall the incident we had at Letabo towards the end of 2018, where the unit was off for almost the whole year. So as the Duva unit. So I'm proud to announce that the teams working together, we've managed to bring back all those units that we've said we're going to bring back. By the end of the past financial year, all those units that were off, save for one unit, which is Duva number 3, where there were some legal action issues that still need to be finalized before we can start working on that unit. So all of those units that were off are currently back. They are all contributing positively to the system. The Kendall unit that you've seen there is the unit that I spoke about that we have taken off specifically to deal with the issue of environmental compliance. Partial load losses, one area that we aggressively focused on during the lockdown to really try and claw back the megawatts on that. Those that we knew, we were just waiting for the opportunity. As the opportunity presented itself, we immediately go into it and dealt with those issues. Partial load losses, we've got plans per unit, per stations. Those that are still part of the reliability maintenance will be addressed on that. So as we get opportunities, we deal with them. The outage, in terms of what we are going to do now on the outage, we have set up now a new approach in terms of the outages, which is called part of the reliability maintenance recovery. Appointed a senior executive to lead this. And also we are going to finalize the issue of contracting with original equipment manufacturers, as we indicated earlier on. So that process needs to be finalized by July. So we have had some delays during the lockdown. The discussions were not as smooth as they need to go. So there we are also looking at two things also, is the skills that to supplement our teams and also to reduce the durations of these outages and to make sure that we do it within a shorter duration of time. The other element of the 9-point plan is the human capital. When we started this journey, we were having a lot of vacancies in our power station. So I'm pleased to announce that we have now filled all of the power station general managers' positions. So all the stations have got the general managers now leading them. And we also filled the vacancies at the second tier of management in the power stations. So that then gives the stability of leadership in the stations. And then also we didn't overlook the future of this company, of this organization as well, and the generation in particular. We have managed to absorb 204 of our trainees within our operation space. And then the relinking of engineering from head office has substantially assisted us. We've got quite a number of people that we have moved from head office to the power stations to really focus on specific issues and close the vacancies that we have had in the power station. So we are making good progress in that space. I think the utilization of open OCGTs, Jan has spoken about that. Our focus this year is to minimize the utilizations of them. So that is really what we are driving to achieve. The part of the 9-point plan last year, we have changed one element and then we put the focus on emissions to say we need to reduce emissions because we've seen the impact of emissions in our generation fleet. So we have now since broadened the scope of this area here. It has to deal with the environmental issues in totality, including water and ash issues. So we've got the steering committee, which I chair every second week to specifically deal with all the parties that are involved in the project department from group capital. We're all sitting together now. We've got the same storyline and the same hymn sheet that we're all singing from in terms of how we're reporting and what we need to do to deal with the environmental compliance matters holistically and with the clear plans as well for all of that. So being supported ably by our environmental manager, Mr. Dieter Herbst, I think the plans that we are putting in place now to deal with these environmental issues, we will be seeing, we will start to see the result as well. It's not a quick fix. It's a big ship to turn, but I think the plans and the focus that is there will make sure that we deal with the issues of compliance. The last point on the 9-point plan was the issue of coal. You will recall when we started, we had a number of stations having below our grid code requirements in terms of the stock days. I must thank our primary energy teams, they're led by Dan Mashiko. They've done exceptionally well to recover the stock. We're currently sitting with a stock days of about 55 days. And then one of the issues as well that we needed to deal with on the coal side was quality, because we have seen that deteriorating coal quality was also affecting the station. I must say the team has done exceptionally well. Quality plans that have been put in place, we are starting to see the result. As well, we are tracking even those that coal that come via rail and that come via trucks as well. So there's good quality plan from the mines and also in the power stations itself, just to make sure that we minimize the impact of coal in our production system. So that is, in short, the brief on the 9-point plan in terms of how are we progressing on that. This here, I just want also to reflect on the maintenance recovery in terms of our reliability maintenance. Like I've indicated, we have set up a team led by a senior executive who also report to myself on this, and we have a steering committee that is also chaired by the COO that will now take over all these outages and manage it as a project, because we are in a recovery mode. So the focus on the stations is on those 11 power stations at the bottom there, because out of the 15 coal fleet, 4 of them are closer to retirement. So we will not going to be spending a lot of capex on the station that will be closing in the next 5 years or so. So the focus will be on these 11 power stations. That's where we're going to be spending a lot of our focus on. Again here, with our colleagues in Group Capital that we've been working at Medupi, and indicated that Medupi, by the end of this financial year, all Medupi units will be under generation, so which means the scope. So we are also optimizing the requirements that we need to bolster this team. So we're getting the teams from that to form part of this project team that will be assisting our power station to drive the outages. We might complement with some of the fixed-term contractors on a 2 to 3 year basis, but those especially will be focusing on the specialized skills like we are senior planners, because planning is one area that we have identified as needing some improvement in our area. And obviously, when we undertake a project of this nature, communication with our stakeholders, our organized labor internally and also externally to the generation division is going to be critical. The other point I want to just touch on briefly as well, which has happened since the last time we have engaged. With the lockdown, we had to declare a force majeure in our specifically primary energy department division for our coal suppliers, because with the lockdown, we have seen about 2 million tons drop in terms of the coal that we were supposed to burn. So obviously that came with some other challenges as well for the station, because this 2 million ton we needed to put it on our coal stockpiles, but the coal stockpiles have also got legal limits that we need to observe all the time. So hence we had to issue this notice to our suppliers of coal that we might not be able to take all the coal as we have planned before the lockdown. But what is important to state on this point is that we have not suspended any of the supply of coal, and also all the coal that has delivered to the power station, there's no risk of not making payment for the coal that has been delivered. So there's no risk of that. For whatever the suppliers have put in, we will pay for what they've submitted or they've delivered to the power station. This is just in summary to give you an overview of the lockdown, how it has impacted our initial plans. We had, between March and August, we had 31 units that we needed to deal with. So obviously with the lockdown, and also to observe the protocols, because some of the major reliability outages, you need a lot of people, so we had to move to shift out about 10, and then, but we have managed to bring back some of the units that were not part of this. So you'll see there on the top left, it talks about those number of units. On the right top quadrant, it talks about the energy in terms of megawatts involved. Then the bottom portion, I will deal with it in the next slide. It deals with the commitment that we have made to Eskom in terms of what we were going to claw back, that 1,977. So I will deal with it in the next slide to say, as of now, we have clawed back 1,700 of that. So the rest of it, that unit is still on an outage. You've heard that Medupi Unit 6 is still on an outage now. So, but we are confident that that 2,000 commitment we will actually meet, and we're looking even beyond that, because we are also looking at other opportunities to deal with this issue of addressing the partial load losses in the fleet. I think this picture here is the picture that we had before the lockdown in terms of how we saw the winter plan picture looking like. I think you will recall that Jan talked about 31 days of stage 1 load shedding. And then you'll see that during December and what has happened after the lockdown or in terms of where we are now. So this one we also try to illustrate where we come from since December, where we had terrible period of performance. So to say when we started in April, we went into just below 10,000, which was something that was pleasing, because we were moving from a very, very bad base. So now, after the lockdown, this is how the picture is looking like. You'll see that the dark line is moving away from the gas line as well. So what does that mean? It means then we will be still using gas, but maybe just to meet the peak demand. So there is some lot of gains that we have made. Going forward, obviously, for the winter months, that's where it is. The summer months, we still need to relook at it in details in terms of how it's going to look like. So, but for the winter month, what is pleasing is that the level of utilization of our gas turbine has reduced quite substantially as well. So that is how the picture we're looking at it. Hence, we talk about that 3 days of load shedding now from 31 days that we initially had at a P80 confidence level. So we are looking to achieve this in terms of where we are with our system. And then obviously we will also want to urge our customers that now as we are going into winter, the peak in winter is around between 5 and 8 o'clock in the evening. So that they continue to support with the reduction of the load during those times. That will assist us greatly to manage the minimization of load shedding during this period. So we do not see any stage 2 and 3 load shedding during this winter based on the plans that I've just shared. The next step, obviously, is to confirm that partial load losses that we have committed of around 2,000, that we will deliver that. That is the commitment that our generation leadership has committed into it. And then also we are still in a lockdown, so we continue with some of the short-term maintenance, dealing with the details, with the defects, and we also started to bring back now some of the contractors to continue with the major reliability outages. Obviously, when we bring them back, the people will still need to strike the balance, because the risk is still there with the pandemic risk in terms of bringing more people to site. So that is the main risk that we are currently working on strategies to see how do we minimize that and mitigate for it as it comes. I've spoken about the stage 1 load shedding coming from the 31 days that we had pre the lockdown to the 3 days now at P80 confidence levels. In conclusion, as an organization and also in particular as generation, we are committed to improving the operational performance, and then also not to compromise in our reliability maintenance, because we have seen the consequences of not sticking with the philosophies of how the plant should be maintained. You know, that's what brought us where we are now. So that commitment is something that we are driving, because we strongly believe that that is what is going to give us the sustainable generation business. And also, given our experience, our transmissions and distribution colleagues, they are also, as Jan has indicated, aggressively also addressing the network so that they don't end up where the generation plant ended up as well. So our colleagues are also picking up the speed there. And we want also to commit to keep the South Africans informed of what is happening. We will do that proactively in terms of where we are with our plans, and where we've got difficulties, we will honestly also share that. Our drive and also our resolve is not to implement load shedding, because we understand the pain that comes with it. So we will do all that is necessary to minimize the impact of that should it happen. I did speak about the time, especially during the winter months, where customers can also assist by lowering that peak as well during the evening from 5 to 8 o'clock. In conclusion, I want to close with this slide where, again, we appeal to the South African to assist by switching off unnecessary lights that we might have in our houses, things like pool pumps and non-essential appliances. That also, apart from saving our customers money, our South Africans, it's also a good thing to do as well, to ensure that this commodity, that is electricity, we're using it sparingly. So I thank you very much for your listening to us.
We are going to go through questions, and Nomaswazi Shongwe is going to help read the questions. Let me just remind you, on the left-hand side of your screen, you can type in your question, and we will take 3 questions at a time. Nomaswazi is going to help read them. Andre, when in his safety briefing, Mr. Makoba should have told you there's an exit right behind you, in case the questions get too hot. And you can answer from your seats there. Swazi, do we have any questions, please?
Yes, we do, Skanati. The first one is from Angelo Coppola. He wants to know what is the latest cost-based percentage breakdown in generation in terms of labor, procurement of coal, and other procurement. And then he also wants to know how many staff are employed in the new restructured Eskom. And then we've got a question from Helmo Prius. He wants to know who is the Chief Restructuring Officer and how does he or she interact with the CEO and COO.
Thank you very much. Andre, we do have our other colleagues on MS Teams that will help with the answers. Go ahead, Andre.
Thanks. In response to the question raised by Andrew, I must confess that I don't have all of that information to hand. Maybe Becky, or else if we can have our CFO respond with those, with the detailed cost percentage breakdown. I wouldn't want to give a misleading answer on that one. As far as the CRO is concerned, the CRO report was supposed to have been handed to government on at the end of February. I understand that for a variety of reasons that I'm not fully familiar with, that report has not been handed over, and therefore there are at this point in time no engagements between the CRO and Eskom, and we are making our plans under the guidance of our board and also from the shareholder. Thank you.
Thanks. In terms of the cost breakdown, coal and water procurement, 56%. Materials around about 4%, the Eskom labor 10%, the environmental levy and other taxes and insurance 10%, and then other contracts, the remainder, which is about 20%. So if we talk about coal and water, approximately 70 billion per annum. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jan. Elsie, are you able to help, or Caleb, on the question?
Yes, I'm able to. Should I respond to the staff numbers we have in currently?
Yes, please go ahead, Elsie.
So from the previous financial year, we have reduced our staff numbers by 1,619, and we had a further exit, as the CE indicated, through VSPs in the last quarter of this year. So in terms of what the total structure, what the total number of employees and new structure would be, is that we continue to reduce our numbers through natural attrition. So you might be aware that we have frozen external growth. So we will be demonstrating the reduction of numbers by the end of this financial year, better than this.
Thank you, Elsie. Maswazi, do we have the next 3 questions, please?
Yes, we've got 2 from Antoinette Slabert. She wants to know, is the GCE saying Rotec may be sold? And she also wants to know, how are the production bonuses self-funded, not from public money, if Eskom revenue is from tariff paid by consumers? And then we've got one from Miriam Issa. She wants to know, is Eskom certain it will not require any further bailouts from government this year, as predicted by some of the credit rating agencies?
Thank you. All yours, Andre.
Thanks, Antoinette, for those questions. There are no plans at this point in time to sell Rotec. So what we are talking about is a refocusing of our activities. You may be aware that Rotec for some time has been trying to access external markets outside of Eskom. We think that that has been a distraction. It has resulted in ERI resources not always being available to fulfill Eskom requirements. So we are going to be focusing those resources now internally. The services that Rotec is offering are incredibly important to Eskom, particularly for generation, and here I talk about the so-called center line, which is very much involved in the refurbishment of turbines, which of course are an integral part of any power station. So no, we don't intend to sell Rotec, but we are going to be looking at optimizing both its asset base as well as its cost base. It does have a very large number of temporary employees in its staff complement, and we are going to be relooking at how we can engage with those temporary employees in order to reduce the cost base of Rotec. With regard to the second question, yes, it is true, of course, that electricity tariffs are paid by the public at large. But I think it's equally true that Eskom is run as a business. And it is a well-known phenomenon in business that employees respond very well to incentives. And in this instance, as we've indicated, if we are able to reduce our diesel consumption by 2 or 3 billion rand, as we intend to do, through additional work across the organization, significantly exceeding current performance. And I have to stress this. This is not paying people for turning up to work. This is incentivizing people to deliver performance that is above and beyond what they normally do. And if they do that and they deliver savings, with other words, we burn less diesel, we burn less fuel oil, we improve our environmental compliance, and therefore have greater system availability. Not only does the public save money because of the fact that our tariffs are supposed to be cost reflective, and therefore if we have a lower cost base, electricity tariffs will be lower, but we also drive greater efficiency throughout the organization. So this is not taking public money and giving it to Eskom employees. This is enabling us to deliver a sustainably lower cost base by driving efficiencies through incentivizing the lower echelons of the organization. With regard to so-called bailouts, the National Treasury has committed to providing an equity injection into Eskom to the tune of 56 billion rand. We have already received 23 billion of that, so it's been fully appropriated. There is a balance outstanding of some 33 billion, and we are on track with receiving those funds for the remainder of the financial year. So there are no additional bailouts or government assistance that we expect or that we require to. We fully understand the stresses and strains experienced by the fiscus at this point in time, and consequently we have taken, as I've said, the knife to our cost, to our capex spend, in order to ensure that even in spite of a reduced revenue base following on the COVID-19 pandemic, we are able to live within our means. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have the next batch, please? That will be Tandu Mzoe reading for us the next batch.
The next question is from Chris Yeland from EE
Please,
Business.
your mic.
The next question is from Chris Yeland from EE Business Intelligence. And his questions are, he's got two questions. The compliance notice of 10 December 2020 served on Eskom by the environmental regulator says that information on air pollution presented by Eskom in respect of Kendall Power Station is a gross misrepresentation of the facts, and that Eskom knowingly and deliberately applies wrong calculation methodology in its submissions, which puts the entire data presented and the claimed emission reductions in question. The Eskom manager of risk and compliance says that an internal investigation is being conducted by Eskom's audit and forensic department into this misrepresentation of the facts and other underreporting of environmental contraventions to the regulator. Then today, the Eskom spokesman is quoted in Business Day today that the management of Eskom did not deliberately submit incorrect information or lie about the environmental compliance. Is Eskom not preempting the outcome of its own internal investigation? Will the public trust an internal investigation into such serious external matters that affect the lives, health, and safety of communities and the public? And the public, will it not be more appropriate to have an independent investigation into Eskom's environmental mismanagement for at least a decade? That's question one. Question two, in an interview with the Eskom CEO on 15 April 2020, he said, he said that Eskom planned to decommission older coal-fired power plants following a schedule and timeline disclosed in the IRP 2019 and the DPE's Eskom roadmap. Then a few weeks later, an Eskom document dated 28 April 2020 was released through a PAIA application by the Center for Environmental Rights. Details investigations underway by Eskom to delay decommissioning of Camden, Grootvlei and Hendrina power stations, well beyond what is stated in the IRP and Eskom roadmap. The Eskom document goes on to state that there are no decommissioning assessment or plans available to be provided in terms of the PAIA request. Please, may we have some clarification on these apparent contradictions? And the third question.
Can we hold on to that too? Andre, you're going to take those?
Yep, thanks, Ignati, and thanks, Chris. We are very concerned, obviously, about allegations of misrepresentation of environmental data. This is not in keeping with the values that we seek to drive in the organization. We are taking these statements extremely seriously, and hence we have already instructed our audit and forensic department, which, by the way, reports directly into me. They don't report into any other executive. They report directly into me to investigate these allegations. We need to get to the bottom of this. We have absolutely no intention to present misleading information to anybody, least of all the South African public, when it comes to a matter that is as sensitive as environmental compliance. And therefore we will, I can give you, the public the assurance that we will get to the bottom of it. If we are of the view that our internal investigation should be augmented by using external resources, this is a decision that we will take. But I can give the public the assurance that we are going to investigate this very rigorously and really understand to what extent there has been misreporting of data, and we will then make the findings of those reports public. We will share them, and it will then be available for all to see, and people can then draw their own conclusions as to whether or not the investigative process has been successful in achieving its objectives. Right. On to the second question about the older power stations. Chris, again, I can give you the assurance that we do have a decommissioning plan that is aligned with the IRP. That is the version that I subscribe to, that my ExCo subscribes to, that the board subscribes to, that the government subscribes to. I think the document that was released that contains contradictory information does not represent Eskom's policy, it does not represent Eskom's strategy, and therefore we would like to correct that document that was released, and we're going to stick to what is stated in the IRP, and hence, as I've already stated publicly, we are going to be engaging in a process to look at how we can repurpose those power stations in a way that ensures a just transition for the communities that have served for a very long time in the areas surrounding Camden, Grootvlei and Komati, that we don't disadvantage them by literally and figuratively pulling the plug and just walking away after being a core element of those economies for so many years. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. Tandiwe, you've got the last question from Chris, please.
No, it's not from Chris. It's
Okay,
from
go ahead.
Yes. The next question is from Siphelele Ludla. How much does Eskom plan or hope to raise from the disposal of non-core assets such as Roadtech, Escape, and EFC? And where will this capital be utilized in the business? Will it be servicing debt, capex, or what?
Just hold it there, please, Andre. 2 more questions.
Okay. We've got one from Helmo Prius. He wants to know how will reliability maintenance from the 1st of July interact with normal winter maintenance plan of reduced planned maintenance? And then we've got Claire Folkvane. She wants to know what does it mean when Andre says Eskom is relooking at the distribution business model. Any ideas of what this may look like?
Thank you, Swazi. Please go ahead, Andre. I guess, Peggy, the second question is yours.
Okay, sorry, I just need to make careful notes here of the comments. Sipolele, at this point in time, we don't have plans, as I've said earlier in response to a question from Antoinette Slobert, to dispose of Rotec. So we don't anticipate that there will be proceeds. To the extent that we receive any monies from the disposal of non-core assets, the proceeds will primarily be applied to a reduction in debt. Our debt burden of 450 billion is our biggest single challenge that we have as an organization. And any measure that we can take to address that debt burden in a constructive way is therefore a top priority for us. So that is the focus area for any proceeds that we may raise. Just a note of caution there. Of course, we are still in a process, and we need to see what bids are going to be received, particularly for EFC. We are not desperate sellers. So if we get cheeky offers, then we will have to make our plans differently and understand how we take that process forward. So for people who are considering putting in a bid, only serious buyers will be considered, to use second-hand car trading terminology. I'm going to ask Becky to respond to the interface between reliability maintenance versus the winter plan.
Thank you, Andre. I think the winter plan is built based on the plans on the maintenance as well. So they are interlinked. We use the available capacity that is required, and then the planning base for maintenance is based on that. So what we have shown there, it also reflects the maintenance that we will be doing during this period. So it is not that it's happening on the sideline. It is exactly what informed what we projected there is intrigued on the plans that are needed to meet the winter demand as well.
Thank you, gentlemen. Do we have the next batch of questions?
There was one question still from Claire, which I didn't answer, about the distribution business.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So, Claire, yes, the distribution business or the distribution sector in South Africa at this point in time is quite fragmented. So with Eskom supplying in excess of 90% of electricity generated in South Africa, we supply of that electricity about 46% to municipalities, who then on-sell that electricity to customers, both residential and industrial, resident in their areas. Now, part of the reason why there is a perception that electricity tariffs in South Africa are too high is the fact that those municipalities apply a very significant markup to electricity that they on-sell to those customers. And that markup can vary from anything as low as 10% to as high as 80%. And of course, this then aids in the perception that electricity pricing is exorbitantly high, which is a statement that we would contest. There is a school of thought that says that all electricity in South Africa should be distributed through our municipalities. We are not there yet, because I think given the history of non-payment by a number of municipalities. Again, the top 20 municipalities who are defaulting owe Eskom in the order of about 26, 27 billion rand, and restructuring the distribution sector without ensuring that Eskom receives payment for electricity that is delivered to those municipalities will simply exacerbate the financial challenges that Eskom currently faces. So it is clear that there is a fragmented business model. It results in widely varying electricity prices being experienced in different jurisdictions. And as we engage with various stakeholders, including SALGA, including COGTA, I think it's very important that we take account of the complexities associated with the distribution business. Currently, I think policy positions on the distribution business are the least developed of all of the policies that are applicable to the electricity sector, and therefore there is more work to be done on finalizing that structure.
Thank you, Andre. Do we have the next batch, please, Tandiwe?
Yes. The next question is from Angela Coppolo, and the question is, did Eskom double the rate they pay to South 32 for the coal supplies from Ifale to Colliery to Dover Power Station? And the next 4 questions are from Elaine Mills. Under Just Transition transaction, will Eskom obtain funding from overseas development finance institutions and long-term institutional investors? And the second question is, if so, how much will be obtained? Will it be in return for a faster than previously planned phased out of coal-fired generation? If so, how much faster will coal-fired generation be decommissioned?
Thank you. Peggy, do you want to take the question on South 32, please?
I think the matter of South 32, they have declared hardship at our Dover power stations, which we are currently, as indicated, finalizing the due diligence by the team of specialists that we have appointed to do that. So then, based on the outcome of that, we will then take that due diligence report to Exco and also to the board. So for now, we can't pronounce on that until that due diligence process has been finalized on the hardship that was declared by South 32 on the Dover mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. Andre, you got the other questions.
All right, thanks very much. Under the Just Energy Transition, there is a potential opportunity to access funds from developmental financing institutions who have expressed an interest in facilitating a reduction in the reliance on coal-fired generation. I must stress that this is still very early days. We are still developing these strategies and understanding exactly what the appetite would be. So I cannot give you a firm indication as to the quantum of funds that would potentially be available. And we would need to engage in a structured and properly mandated way with potential funders to understand what that appetite would be and what the conditionality would be attached to that. With regard to the accelerated retirement of some of those power stations, again, a similar question applies. It depends on the final structure of such a transaction, if it were to be allowed to be implemented, if from a policy perspective there is appetite for such a transaction, but we regard this as an opportunity to secure the future of historically coal mining communities that could potentially be exposed to economic hardship as we retire these power stations. So it is part of an inclusive strategy that we seek to develop over the next number of months. We have already engaged our board on this, and we are making further progress in developing and getting greater granularity about what such a transaction could involve. So I'm sorry, but I can't give you more information than that because we are in such an early stage of the project.
Thank you. Please, the next batch, Swazi.
Okay, we've got one from Brendan Ryan. He wants to know, can you please provide an update on the coal supply negotiations between South 32 and Duva, as well as Seriti Resources and Kusile? Can you also please specify which companies you are targeting as having lower cost of capital than Eskom? Then we've got one from Miriam Issa. She wants to know if Eskom has only been able to do short-term opportunistic maintenance over the lockdown period. How will it be able to tackle long-term maintenance as the economy and demand picks up with the easing of the lockdown?
Thank you. Peggy, can I ask you to deal with the Seriti part of the first question with regards to Kusile? And Jan, will you be able to handle the maintenance question? Thank you. Just the Seriti part in terms of Brendan's question.
Okay, thank you, Sikonati. I think the negotiations with Seriti are still ongoing, so we are hopeful that by the end of this winter we should have had concluded in terms of the short-term area. There's some short interventions, mining areas that Seriti can start mining on to start delivering coal earlier than the main mine. So the discussions are still ongoing. Once the negotiations have been finalized and we've got approval from the board, then we will report. But we are still engaging with them. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Peggy. Jan?
Thanks, Sikonati. Miriam, the short-term opportunistic urgent maintenance that we have done will depend on how long the lockdown remains. So we're still continuing to do the urgent short-term maintenance. However, we would like to very soon, depending obviously on what will happen with the lifting of the lockdown, move over to the reliability maintenance. We are getting ready. We have our plans in place, and on a daily, two-day basis, we look at what is happening. We look at the system requirements, the one that I've demonstrated when I made the presentation, looking at the forecast of demand, then looking at the unit that's currently out on maintenance, looking at the ones that we plan to take out, and as and when the lockdown and the discussions of the lifting of the lockdown and specifically which level continue, we will adapt our plans. But at this point in time, the D-Day, as we have said, is the 1st of July. So we have everything in place at this point in time to really kickstart the reliability maintenance as from the 1st of July. But again, this will all depend what happened with the pandemic. Thanks.
If I can respond to the question on the lower cost of capital, what we are referring to here, and I'm not going to name individual companies because I think that these are commercially sensitive discussions, but companies with their main funding sources in Europe or in the United States, where interest rates are significantly lower. So we're not talking about local companies, and we are talking primarily about providers of equipment and services as companies that we feel can support our working capital situation by extending us longer payment terms.
Thank you, Andre. Do we have the next batch, please, Swazi?
We've got one from Antoinette Slabat. She wants to know, has Mr. Director made contact with NERSA to try resolve differences? If so, how was it received? And how does he hope to resolve within the regulatory framework? We've got Claire Folkvane again. She wants to know, any chance we can get some insights into what EPRI report's results were and how these are going to be addressed?
Thank you. Colleagues, we're getting some feedback on the audio system. Please mute until it's your turn to do the talking. Andre?
Right, Antoinette, I've already met the new electricity regulator, Mr. Nhlanhla Gumede, virtually over the internet, and we've had a very positive first engagement. Clearly, we have differences that need to be resolved, and this will take time. I'm under no illusion that these are easy matters to resolve. They are challenging, they are complex. The stakes are high, really large numbers of are involved in terms of tariff increases with an undoubted impact on the South African economy on the one hand, but also an undoubted impact on the viability of Eskom as a going concern going forward. We have another engagement with the electricity regulator scheduled for this week, and again, the engagements are positive. We have been able to invite the regulator to visit our system operator, as well as to engage on visits to power stations. So I think we are working at rebuilding a relationship, and so far I think we are making very satisfactory progress.
Thank you. Soze? Tandiwe?
Yes,
Would you like me to talk about EPRI? There was a question on EPRI.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, sure. It was clear. I assume, Claire, that you talk about the EPRI report on the wire side of the business. Now, it was a very comprehensive report. If you judge it by the thickness of it, it was an extremely comprehensive report. No, jokes aside, it was a very comprehensive report that has looked at all the aspects on the network that is related to the network. So it was dealing with the issue of the age of the equipment, which we understand. You know, some of our equipment on the wire side, and I don't distinguish here between transmission and distribution, I'm talking about the wires, it's both of them, are in excess of 45 years old. So it's coming to the end of life. So, and it means that we haven't invested sufficiently in the past to replace and to refurbish some of these equipment and networks. So this is what has been highlighted. Then also the issue, and I'm just going to highlight the two issues. The one is the age of the equipment. That is an important one. And we went to the board just to quickly give an update. Distribution as well as transmission went to the board and presented the recovery plans, so to speak, in terms of how to deal with the aging network. So there's been approval given. So we now have the plans in place on how to deal with the aging networks. But secondly, specifically that was highlighted in the EPRI report was the fact of aging, again, but protection systems. Now, the protection system is the heart of the network. If you have any malfunction on the protection system, then you're at huge risk. And that is an area that is been highlighted. I was aware of that. And that is something that is actually receiving a lot of attention. Thanks.
Thank you, and please go ahead, Tandiwe.
Yes, the next question is from Angela. The question is, constrained capacity appears likely, considering Quebec 800 megawatts, Camden 1,600 megawatts, and Kendall repairs. Your comment. Another question is from William Horn, and the question is Eskom still willing to commit to the CEO's statement earlier this month that Eskom only expects 3 days of load shedding during Q3? And the next question is from Alexander Winning. The question is the projected loss for financial year 2020 still 20 billion rand? What is the latest on the force majeure notices sent to wind farms and coal suppliers during the COVID-19 lockdown? I understand that wind farms have invoiced Eskom for power despite the notices.
Thank you, Tandiwe. The questions about load shedding have been dealt with. Do you want to quickly summarize, please, Andre?
Yes, if I can answer, William, the answer is yes. Thank you.
Are you taking the next questions? Please, Jan and Peggy.
Okay, maybe to clarify, Quebec, like we indicated, is on cold reserve, so which it means then, based on we see the capacity, we have time to return. That Quebec unit is still available for use before we shut it down for an outage. So currently we are meeting the demand, so we know where we would need the Quebec unit to be brought back, like Jan indicated, in the next 6 weeks. The Camden power station being off, it is modeled as well on the capacity currently. So for us, it's just now to continue with the focus to work with our project team to finalize, expedite the construction of the new dam, and while also making some new other measures as well to move the ash into the older part of the dam. So the capacity of Quebec is part of the plan, and then also the Camden one. Like we said, we will want to bring the unit back just after winter. If there's opportunity, we will start early to bring each unit back online, but it is modeled currently into the capacity plan. Thank you.
Thanks. If I can just talk about the force majeure. It's currently in place up until the end of May. That is what we have declared. So we are currently in the process of reviewing the situation, but as we have indicated today, the demand has increased. This is not saying that means we're going to lift it. So we're in the process to discuss it. We're also in the process to discuss it with some of the affected mines. So we will come back shortly and discuss and make we will say what it's all about and what's going to happen.
If I can address the question on the results, we have not yet finalized our results for the FY20 financial year, and consequently we can't disclose what those results are, but I think suffice it to say that we expect to be profitable at an operating profit level, so with other words, earnings before interest and taxes. But once you add the cost of servicing our debt, it is likely that that will result in a loss-making situation. So that just underscores the importance of addressing as soon as possible the debt burden that Eskom carries.
Thank you, Andre. Do you have any more questions, Jose?
Yes, we do, Skanati. We've got one from Miriam Issa. She wants to know, what demand assumptions was the forecast for 3 days of stage 1 winter load shedding based on? And then Lamiz Omaji wants to know, can clarity please be provided on the difference between reliability maintenance and short-term maintenance? What do the two entail? And then one from Elaine Mills. She wants to know, has Eskom approached the World Bank to have terms of its $3.7 billion loan of Medupi revised?
Thank you. Andre?
I'm going to ask Becky to address the demand assumptions for the 3 days of load shedding. I believe there was a slide in the presentation that conveyed that in quite some detail, so maybe we can just put that slide up again to make sure that the questioner understands. And then, Becky, if you can also address the reliability versus short-term, the whole issue between preventive maintenance and corrective maintenance. I think it's important that people understand the difference between those two terminologies.
Thank you. I think the starting point for the demand is coming from the forecast based on what the forecast is saying. That's how which come from the system operator. So on each day, then it will give us the number, and we look at what is available, number of available generators to meet that capacity. So based on that, then on a base case of 10,000, stress test by national control at 11,000, we are seeing that only for those 3 days, that's where we've got a risk. That is based on the current forecast and the demand for each of these specific days from now up to end of July. So that's how those days are determined based on available capacity and what is demand is on that specific days. And then where we see the shortfall, that's how it get come about. And then if I move on to the issue of reliability maintenance, it entails, the long-term maintenance, which is part of the preventative nature for the future, where we will do, if there is some replacement that need to be done on the plant, you will do that. And then you maintain the plant like the turbines for the next 10 years, that you only open it again in 10 years' time. So that's what the reliability that we talk about. It's a long-term maintenance of the plant for the longer duration. And then the short-term maintenance that we refer to, it's mainly, if you, in a maintenance environment, we'll refer to it as corrective maintenance mostly. It's the specific defects that you have on the plant that you cannot address with the plant while it's running for whatever consideration, mainly safety or whatever. You need the plant to be down. And then that's what the short term is mostly, the corrective maintenance that you will do. And also you might do some short-term maintenance that will result into some long-term approach, but it's really not the thing that you will do to make sure that the turbines run, for an example, from now for the next 10 years before you open the HP turbine again, as an example. So that's the difference between the two. Thanks.
Miriam, just to answer your question specifically on what the 3 days of load shedding was based on, it's on a residual peak in July of 32,544 forecast. Thank you.
Before I deal with a question on the World Bank, I'd just like to add a bit of color. Coming in new into Eskom, I was very impressed with the statistical modeling that I saw at the system operator, where there is a massive information that goes into determining what the demand forecast is going to be. This includes inputs from our major industrial customers, their usage patterns, their maintenance schedules, but also things like school holidays, cold fronts, snow on the Drakensberg. All of these things are incorporated into these models. So there's a very high degree of correlation between what the models predict and what the actual consumption is. We've been at this game for almost 100 years, so by now we have a reasonable understanding of what the market demand is going to be. But the exception, of course, is with the lockdown that really changed demand patterns very significantly, and that's the pattern that we are navigating at the moment. As far as the Eskom relationship with the World Bank is concerned, I would say that it's very good, it's very open, it's very constructive. We engage regularly. I have had discussions with local management of the World Bank quite recently, and I will also be engaging with very senior officials of the World Bank next week. And we are continuously clarifying, exploring, and making sure that we remain aligned and committed on the various terms of the agreements that we have entered into. So I would characterize the relationship as being very open and constructive.
Thank you, Andre. Please go ahead, turn away with the next batch. Just a second. Colleagues, we seem to be getting questions from the same people. I would like those who haven't asked, we have very limited time for one-on-one interviews, to use this opportunity, and I hope nobody is having any connection problems. Thank you.
This is a question from Alex Winning. The CEO's presentation gave us an objective, a debt balance of 200 billion rand, closing cash balance of 30 billion rand, and EBITDA margin of 35%. Over what time frame does Eskom aim to arrive at those financial indicators? And then another question from Chris Yelland. Why did Eskom wait till Camden shut down before the ash dam is sorted out? And then the next question is from Aileen Miss. The question is Eskom seeking not to have to implement flue gas desulfurization at Medupi by 2025? How much will it cost to implement this, and what alternative proposal has Eskom tabled?
Thank you, Taniwe.
Right. Let me start off with the financial question. So those are the parameters within which Eskom will be a financially viable, self-sustaining business without any requirement for further equity injections or support from the fiscus. So we aim to achieve those objectives, and it's a mix of addressing our top line, and that's a mix of volume versus unit margin or tariffs, which we are engaging with NERSA on, and also, of course, eliminating load shedding so that we can sell the megawatts that we generate, very importantly, cutting our costs, and then making sure that we convert the energy from coal and also from other sources as efficiently as possible in order to expand our EBITDA margin. When we will be able to achieve that, I would not wish to give you firm guidance on that at this point in time. That is the outline of what a financially sustainable Eskom would look like. So it's a combination of revenue, profitability, and a dramatically stabilized balance sheet in terms of its debt capacity. So that is what we are aiming for, and if you look at the key elements of our strategic priorities, those are the issues that we are addressing quite actively as we proceed. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may just deal with the Camden issue. I don't think that Eskom waited until the plant is shut down. As I've indicated on the slide that I presented, that we started with the project of a new ash dam at Camden quite early. Unfortunately, we had to cancel the main contractor contracts during the execution, which then means we needed to get a second supplier, and then that also resulted into the delays into the new ash dam completion, so which is currently now being executed to finish this year still, as I've indicated on that. So that was those type of delays as well that has resulted in the new ash dam not finish in time. So, but based on the safety risk factor, we had to take safety first and shut down the power station. Thank you.
Thanks. In terms of Medupi FGD, we did go to the Eskom board in April, end of April, and we presented to them a case. And basically, let's stand back a little bit. Oh yeah, the question was, what is the cost? Now, when it was approved by the board some years ago, it was in excess of 35 billion. But I need to qualify that. So we haven't gone out to tender, so you don't know what the true number will be. But so to answer the question, it's in excess of 35 billion that we estimate. We as Eskom, and I think it's very clear today, have some significant financial challenges. So if you talk in excess of 35 billion, that's a significant amount of money. Now, so that's number one. Number two being, as I've said earlier today, we have just now implemented the design modifications at Medupi Unit 3, and we're in the process now to roll it out to the rest. So we haven't proven, although we have a high confidence level, we haven't proven those modifications yet, the design modifications. So based on these two aspects, and then in addition, we must understand that for each and every unit, you will sacrifice 15 megawatts. So 15 times 6, you will sacrifice 90 megawatts at Medupi Power Station should we proceed. So given this as background, we went to the board and we requested a bit of time, 6 to 9 months, that we can assess the situation. But having said that, we are totally committed to our financing partners to ensure that we are a responsible citizen in terms of environmental requirements. So at this point in time, we are engaging all the various stakeholders to discuss the FGD. And then we will go back to the board, as I said, in the period of 6 to 9 months, and then to present a way forward. Thanks.
Colleagues, we've got the next 40 minutes to conclude this briefing. I would love questions from the people who haven't previously asked any. Suzy, please go ahead.
Okay, we've got one from Lisa Stein. She wants to know, Eskom mentions the restructuring involves proportion the debt to various divisions. Surely most of it will stay in generation. The big question is how lenders will be impacted when Eskom and the debt is split up. Do they need to be consulted? How will the aspect be managed and who will be expected to manage it? Then we've got one from Susan Comrie. She wants to know the fabric filter plant retrofit at Tutuka was supposed to start in financial year 2018-2019. The low nitrogen oxide burner retrofit was supposed to start in financial year 2019-2020. In November 2016, Eskom indicated that designs for the FFP retrofit at Tutuka have been completed. Full or conditional PFMA approvals were granted, and environmental authorization has been issued. Why were these projects delayed? And then we've got one from Jan Cronier. He wants to know what is the status of the investigation into potential sabotage at Tutuka Power Station.
Thank you. Are you going to give the money question to the money man, Caleb Kasim, or you're going to take it, Andre?
No, I think we can talk to the apportionment of debt. It is clear that each of our revenue generating divisions will have to be apportioned some share of the debt. It can't all stay with generation. That is where most of the debt was incurred, obviously for the construction of Medupi and Kusile, but we need to take account of the fact that we have two other divisions that each generate revenue and have a capital base that needs to be supported. And that's exactly the process that we are engaged on at the moment, is to understand exactly what the balance sheets of the various divisions will look like. Part of the reason for opting for a divisionalization approach rather than an immediate legal separation is exactly our understanding that a precipitous legal unbundling would have created enormous concerns amongst our lender base, in particular as regards the security over the assets that we've got and how those would be apportioned, as well as understanding how their agreements would be impacted. So as we develop our business model and our financing model and we structure our balance sheets, we will of course be engaging with our lenders. Some of those discussions have already started. We keep our lenders fully apprised of progress, and we are taking them along on this journey in order to ensure that we do not inadvertently commit an act of breach or default under our loan agreements. We fully understand that that would be highly undesirable, and therefore we are doing this in a very careful and structured manner. If I can pass over to Becky and Jan to deal with the Tutuka issue, please.
Okay, thank you, Andre. I will deal with the delays on the FFP. I think as you will appreciate, the projects of this magnitude are quite complex as well. So we unfortunately had to go out on tender more than once on this Tutuka FFP project. But now we have managed now on this round to finalize the tenders have returned now. We are currently busy with the evaluation. So like I said, that now we have got a focus steering committee that is focusing on all these environmental projects. So that's where we are currently now. We are busy evaluating the bids that were submitted, and then we should be appointing the successful company very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. In terms of your question on the Tutuka sabotage of 2 units in December, I'm part of the President technical task team. And at the last meeting earlier in this month, the feedback was given by the investigating unit that they haven't concluded yet, and that and so I cannot give any more information than that was a feedback that was given at this committee meeting, that it's ongoing, it's not concluded, but they have progressed quite a long way. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Tatiwe, please.
Okay, the next set of questions are from Lamis
Your mic,
Omarji.
please.
Oh. The next set of questions are from Lamis Omarji. Will Eskom be challenging NERSA's decision to grant it a 13.3? Does Eskom expect the COVID-19 crisis and the fallout of business closures and retrenchments to impact its ability to generate required revenue? With regards to Quebec, how long will the refueling take before it can come back online again? Can more clarity be provided on why OCGTs were relied on during the lockdown? Does it have to do with new demand peak times? Assuming the system will take strain as demand ramps up with the easing of lockdown, what is Eskom doing to ensure no unplanned outages could possibly lead to load shedding?
Please hold it there. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We've obviously taken note of the NERSA decision on the tariffs and the 13 billion rand that was determined. It is short of our request. We are therefore, at this point in time, given that the decision was only recently announced, considering our options, and we will be engaging with NERSA as well to understand exactly the full implications of this decision. And having consulted and having assessed the impacts, we will then take a decision on how we take this forward.
Let me deal with a few. Becky, you can take some that I've skipped. Quebec, as I said, is currently on cold reserve. So we plan to bring it back in the next 6 weeks. So we will bring it back, then we will run it for a period. By then, the fuel, we'll come to the end of life of the existing fuel, and then the unit will be taken down, and then on a normal outage for a period of 90 to 100 days. Currently, we are, together with the Department of Health, as well as Department of DMRE and DPE, in the process to get the inspectors out of Belgium, out of Europe, to come to South Africa, because you need these inspectors to witness and sign off on taking the spent fuel out of the pools and then to refuel. So it is a process that's ongoing, it's well planned, it's well executed at this point in time. So that's the issue on Koeberg. In terms of the open cycle gas turbines, why have we run these? I thought I did say that during the lockdown period, sometimes because of the low demand during night minimums, we had to run some of these diesels, you know, to assist us. And Becky can talk a little bit more about the current use of the open cycle gas turbines. In terms of unplanned outages, I need to make it very clear, although we have now embarked on aggressive short-term opportunistic maintenance dealing with, the urgent matters on the system. We have recovered some partial load losses, and we believe where we have worked on these units, there has been an improvement. But you can only get sustainability and reliability of these units when you have done proper reliability maintenance. And that we haven't done aggressively yet, and we said all along that due date hopefully will be the 1st of July. So for the next, up until I guess end of July, August next year, the risk of load shedding will remain because of the unreliability and unpredictability of our system. So I cannot make that clear enough, that the risk unfortunately because of the neglect of the last decade on our system, will remain up until we've done proper maintenance on it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jan. I think maybe let me start it from the initial phase on the lockdown as well to see. Remember what we said during the night minimum, the load will change from 26,000 in the peak and come to as low as 15,000 megawatts. So to start the coal plant unit, it will take you about between 10 to 12 hours. And so from a cost perspective, and you burn a lot of fuel oil to start the plant and then run it for 2 hours, shut it down, and so it becomes cost effective as well to say, rather keep the coal plant down, run the gas turbine to meet that peak on the peak demand that need to be met on this particular day. So it's the same thing that we are currently doing as well. You find that the demand is about 29,000 for a day, but peak on peak it might go to 30,000. So, and it's for a shorter period, and then that's when we use these peak generators to meet that peak in the peak period. So long as it is used in that fashion, I think it's an efficient way of managing the system. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. Taliwe, do you want to proceed, please?
Yes. How will the shutting down of 2 units at Kendall and Camden units impact Eskom's ability to meet demand after lockdown? With more financial institutions indicating they are moving away from investing in coal, how might this impact Eskom's ability to raise required funds from the market? Might this push Eskom towards moving to renewable energy generation? And the next ones are from Terence Creamer. Please, could you name the divisional MDs? Why is IPP renegotiation a priority given that Eskom has acknowledged that this is a pass-through cost? What is the time frame for the negotiations? And what is the role of DMRE as it procured the energy in the first place?
Thank you. Peggy, the matter about Camden and Kendall, in summary, you dealt with it extensively. Please.
Thank you, Sikonati. I think Camden, like I said, we're not shutting down 2 units. Unit 1 is currently running. We have done an outage, so Unit 1 is in compliance. It's only Unit 5 that we are busy with it currently, that is on outage, busy with a major upgrade on that. And then the Camden situations, as I've also dealt with, that as we are modeling the capacity plan, we have also factored the impact of Camden units that are currently off. And then as we are creating the space, we will gradually bring those units back online as well as part of the plan. Thanks.
Thank you. Are you able to take the rest of the questions, gentlemen? Go ahead. Yeah.
Right. Let me deal with the implications of financial institutions increasingly moving away from funding coal projects. That is definitely a global trend, and it's an accelerating global trend. I think it's fair to emphasize that most of these announcements relate to new projects, new coal-fired projects, and not necessarily to the funding of an existing coal-based operator. So while it is a trend that we have definitely noted, and we are very aware of it, it is not something that at this point in time we think will prevent us from accessing debt markets to support our lending program going forward. Having said all of that, I think it is clear that increasingly as we retire older power stations, the availability of funds to replace, whether it's by Eskom or by private investors, such capacity with coal-fired capacity is going to become constrained from an availability of financing perspective. And hence there is a strong trend supported by the financial fraternity to support renewables, and we can expect that this will result in an increasing complement of renewable energy technologies being deployed in order to support generation requirements going forward. So very much a mega trend in the financial world that we need to take account of. If I can name the divisional MDs, you are looking at one of them, Mr. Beki Nkumalo, who is the Divisional Managing Director of Generation, Mr. Segamotso Skeepers, who is the Divisional MD responsible for the transmission business. And then we are also joined today by Mr. Monde Bala, who is the Divisional MD responsible for distribution. When it comes to the IPP renegotiations, this is a highly complex issue, and one needs to unpack the tariffing structure and the allowance in the NERSA tariff determination for the recovery of IPP costs. To the extent that that allowance is inadequate compared to the cost of Eskom generating that same electricity, because I think it's important to stress that we can't assume that IPPs generate, particularly for bid window 1 and 2, generate electricity at a cost that is so significantly in excess without taking into account the fact that Eskom itself would have spent money on generating that replacement electricity and putting in place that substitution capacity to meet the demand that is currently being met by IPPs. Having said all of that, I think that there is an opportunity for us to request IPPs to look at potentially refinancing. We think that some of the financing arrangements are potentially suboptimal and that there are opportunities to lower the financing cost and thereby also reduce the costs paid by Eskom to those IPPs. So early days, the first engagements have taken place, and we are cautiously optimistic that I think with the assistance of the DMRE as well as the IPP office, that we will be able to arrive at an acceptable outcome that serves the needs of the country, but also serves the needs of the investment community by allowing adequate investment certainty on these projects, and that process is therefore continuing. As far as the role of the DMRE in enabling procurement is concerned, I would recommend that you address those questions to the DMRE. That is not within my purview.
Thank you, Ian. Are you able to proceed?
Okay. We've got one from Lisa Stain. She wants to know the Hillside contract expires in July. What progress has there been in renegotiating this contract? Her second question is the Duva contract is loss-making for SA Energy Coal. What are the terms of the new interim agreement? What is the status of the renegotiation? There were hurdles at National Treasury level. Is this still the case? Why should it be that Eskom and in turn the public pay more for coal in order for this deal to work? Then we've got one from Jan Cronier. He wants to know, earlier this year, Mineral Resources and Energy Minister Kwede Mantashe announced plans for a new power utility distinct from Eskom. What is Eskom's knowledge of the status of this new entity, and is it possible, and its possible impact on Eskom? And then we've got...
Sazi, please hold right there. Thank you. Gentlemen. Please come over here, sir.
We are inviting Mr. Monde Bala, who is head of the distribution business, to come and address the question on Hillside contract renegotiation.
Thanks, Andre. Thanks, colleagues. On the Hillside contract.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, on the Hillside contract, we are aware that the contract is expiring in July. We have taken through our approval process the recommendation to NERSA for some extension. I must stress that there is a need for us to finalize on the long-term pricing framework. That's what will give us the long-term sustainability of the matter. I think for now, the matter is out of Eskom's hands. It's in the hands of the regulator for a final decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Monde. By the way, that's Monde is the MD of distribution, in case you were wondering.
Thank you, Monde. That was all the questions in that round. Please, let's take the last 2 rounds, colleagues.
Okay. The next question
Sorry,
is from...
Sikonati, I think you missed a couple of questions there.
Thank you, Andrew. Go ahead.
There is the Duva coal procurement one, which I think we've dealt with. If Lisa, if you've got further questions on that, I think let's take it offline and we can engage with you and explain. But it's I think important to when we look at coal pricing, to understand that coal is not an homogeneous commodity. Some of our coal contracts are very competitively priced. Others are priced at levels that are too high in our view. And we should therefore not look at all of our coal contracts through a single lens. We need to look at coal contracts individually and understand what the cost structures are, what the calorific value is, what the coal quality is, and then compare to benchmarks that we've got internally, assess what the appropriate coal price would be for a particular supply to a particular power station. And I can assure you that that process is currently undergoing a lot of scrutiny. We understand where there are coal contracts that are priced too high, and we have already engaged with those suppliers with a view to renegotiating those contracts. So that process is on the go, and it's being very tightly monitored by Becky, also by Jan, as well as by myself. With regards to Jan's question about a second public power utility, we have obviously taken note of this. At this point in time, we will await further announcements by the DMRE in this regard, and once that is clarified and we understand what the position is, then we will be able to respond to the policy position adopted by our shareholder, and that is obviously ultimately where decisions of matters of policy are made, and that is not for us to comment on or criticize. Thank you.
Second last round, please.
The next question is from Susan Comrie, and the question is, Minister Mantashe recently announced that government was open to receiving proposals for 2,500 megawatts of new nuclear power. Will Eskom oversee the new nuclear build program, or will it fall under Energy Department? And what is the status of this program? And the next question is from Antoinette. Are you not at risk of suppressing demand due to increasing tariffs if court challenges succeed and thereby losing sales volumes?
Thank you. Just before you go, Sazi, you got any?
There was just one more from Lisa. She wanted to know, when does Eskom expect the unbundling to be completed?
Okay, this will be the very last one. If there is anyone whose question has not been read at all, can you find it? And that's it.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
No, there is no questions.
There is no questions. Gentlemen, the last round. Thank you.
In accordance with applicable legislation that is currently in place, Eskom is the designated operator of nuclear generation in South Africa. That position has as yet not changed, and depending on how the nuclear build program, if any, is rolled out, Eskom will be involved unless and until the legislation changes that particular status. Jan, anything that you'd like to add to that? Okay, Jan confirms. Antoinette, when you benchmark Eskom tariffs against international tariffs, it is clear that Eskom tariffs, as levied by Eskom, and I have to stress this, and not by municipalities, are still very low, and they are therefore, I don't think, at a level where they suppress demand. We have done economic modeling on the price elasticity of electricity tariffs, and in our view, there is a very limited risk of demand destruction. Having said that, an appropriate response by electricity consumers in terms of utilizing energy and electricity specifically more efficiently by implementing energy efficiency projects surely is a desirable outcome from an economic perspective as well as from an environmental perspective. And this is a pattern that we have seen repeated in Germany in particular, and that has not stood in the way of German economic development, Germany being the second largest exporter of manufactured goods in the world, in spite of having electricity tariffs that are at least double of what Eskom charges its customers. The timeline for when unbundling will be completed, the timeline set in the DPE's policy document, the roadmap for a restructured electricity industry in South Africa, is for the restructuring process to be complete by the end of next calendar year. That is an aggressive timeline because of the fact that there is an enormous amount of work that needs to be done. Typically, large corporate restructuring exercises take anything from 2 to 3.5 years, if we can use the recent Old Mutual unbundling as an example. So these are not simple projects to implement. There are many considerations. We've highlighted a few in our discussions today: debt, staff, operational issues, financial issues, transfer pricing, and all of these need to be navigated very carefully if we don't want the wheels to come off halfway through implementing this process. But we are committed to meeting that timeline, and we are working hard to achieve the policy objectives set by our shareholder.
Swazi, you just have one last question, and after that, Andrea, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to give your key messages. Jan, the same. Peggy, please will you read the last question?
Okay, this one is from Elaine Mills. She wants to know, please could Eskom provide its most recent official decommissioning plan?
Are we able to take that, Peggy?
Yeah, I think following proper governance, obviously we will have to, it's not a decision that I can take now, but in terms of the plans, it can be made public depending on the governance that allows us to do that from generation. Yeah. Maybe Andrea can just add on that.
Thank you.
I think it's a very complex question to answer because it depends very much on the supplementary capacity that is made available as a result of inquiries to add additional capacity. While it is easy to say that we will commit to shutting down power station X on date Y, if that results in extensive load shedding because of a lack of capacity, then clearly we will not have performed our duty according to the requirements of the country and the requirements of the economy. So it is an intricate balancing act that we have to follow, and therefore the importance of all stakeholders following through on the creation of additional capacity is very important in order to enable us to meet our decommissioning dates in accordance with the IRP in a responsible fashion.
Thank you, Andrea. Jan, any closing remark?
Thanks, Sekunati. I believe we as Eskom, we fully understand the mandate that we have to the country and the economy, and that is to supply reliable and sustainable electricity. Now, I can assure the public of South Africa that commitment you have from Eskom. And I would like to really give recognition to all the colleagues that is working in Eskom tirelessly under very difficult situation and circumstances. At this point in time, I really salute you. Thanks.
Thank you. Peggy, any closing words?
Chair, firstly, just to thank for the colleagues for coming to this briefing today. I think just to echo what Jan is saying is also demonstrate our commitment to being transparent with the South African public in terms of what we are doing, what challenges we are facing. So I think that it also, as I said earlier on, that we are committed also to turn around the current performance and making sure that it is sustainable for the long-term approach of this country. Thank you.
Andre, key message, please.
Thanks again to everybody attending, and we appreciate your interest. It is clear that we are on a journey, and one doesn't reach the destination of a journey overnight. There is a lot more work to be done. There is a lot of effort that needs to go into turning Eskom around, even while we change our structure, even while we explore different strategies, different options to become a sustainable, reliable supplier of electricity to South Africa. And to echo Jan's words, we are working very hard to ensure that that happens, and we can give the South African public the assurance that Eskom is committed to ensuring that we live up to our mandate of being a reliable supplier of electricity to South Africa. Thank you very much for your interest and your continued support.
Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, online, thank you very much for your attendance and thank you for your attention. Have a safe and good day.
So this is coming with the schedule.